Welcome back to Education Matters. Did you correctly answer E? There are $8 billion in facility needs across the state, including repairs, renovations, additions, and new buildings. Now let's welcome our next guest who has spent a lot of time studying state budgets, including education. He is Kris Nordstrom. Kris is a policy analyst at the North Carolina Justice Center, and I should point out that Kris also spent 9 years with the fiscal research staff at the North Carolina General Assembly. So you were the go-to guy. I know with our organization, you were one of the people that helped us understand the budget. So thank you for being here to help our viewers understand these things. I mentioned that Kris is the author of a new report. I've got it right here, and we're going to have a link to it on our website at ncforum.org, and you can also go to ncjustice.org and find it. Financing Education in North Carolina. Well, let's talk about that. As we talk about, what is some of your takeaways when you look at school funding in North Carolina? You and I have talked before about the issues of adequacy. And what do you arrive at, or what do you talk about in this report?
Well, I hope the report serves as a good resource for parents, teachers, other advocates within the public school system, and other stakeholders. But one of the takeaways is understanding that the elements of a public school finance system. And two of the important ones are adequacy and equity. So when we talk about equity, we've got very diverse school districts in the state. We've got big districts, small districts, poor districts, and wealthier districts. And so equity looks at the extent to which school funding is distributed according to those needs.
And that's where things like the low wealth supplemental funding, small county, those were created years ago to address
children's
issues
disabilities,
of equity. That was about equity. Okay.
So there are a number of allotments the state provides to try to address those needs in accordance with each district's needs. But the second piece, the important piece to understand, is adequacy. Adequacy is really the extent to which the state provides, state or locals, provides sufficient resources, be the high-quality teachers, support staff, books, so forth, to ensure that each student has the ability to graduate from school, career, or college ready. Right.
Now, the General Assembly is obviously looking at it. I think they're calling education finance reform. I think there's a bill that's been passed out in the House to create a task force to look at it. Now, is the General Assembly planning on looking at either adequacy or equity based on what you've seen so far?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
The legislation creating the task force does not require the task force to look at equity or adequacy. Unfortunately, the bill only is asking the task force to come up with a completely revamped system of funding public schools in North Carolina, and that's really putting the cart in front of the horse. If we don't know how well the system is working, it doesn't necessarily make sense to totally revamp the system.
Right. So we don't know, are we actually investing enough to meet every child, or are we just simply changing the way we deliver the money? I guess that would be part of the question. So we've talked about this before on the program and tried to explain. It can get real wonky really fast, but we've talked about allotments. We actually went through with one of the analysts from the Program Evaluation Division about you've got. Right now, we allot for teachers and textbooks and certain things. You heard Superintendent Markley talking about there used to be allotments for certain kinds of teachers. What is the General Assembly kind of looking at or directing it the task force to look at now?
So what the task force is being asked to do is to look at creating a new system where instead of having individual allotments for things like teachers, principals, children with disabilities, low-income students, what instead they would do is what's called a weighted student formula, where there would be a base amount provided on behalf of each student in the public schools, and then additional amounts would be provided for students with certain characteristics or students in districts that have certain characteristics. At the end of the day, they're really just two different ways, barring some small sort of technical differences that we can get into if you want to get into the weeds. But at the end of the day, there are really two different ways of essentially doing the same thing. Whether you provide money via allotments or via this weighted student formula, what the district cares about in the end is how much money they're getting. and whether that money is adequate to actually educate all their students.
And I know we had Representative Craig Horn on, who's been one of the leaders on this, and he talked about the issue of transparency and being able to, the allotment system is so convoluted. Some fair points, right? I mean,
Sure.
so what are the I don't know, potential positives and potential downsides of any of these systems, or does it really come back to what is your intent in the first place?
I think definitely there's no magic to one system or the other. You know, there are states with weighted student formulas that are very inequitable. There are states with weighted student formulas that are equitable. There are states with weighted student formulas that are inadequate and those that are adequate. So what really matters is not so much which system you're using. What matters more are the policy decisions made by the politicians within that system to make sure that whatever system you choose, to make sure that it is equitable and adequate.
In this report, and there's a lot of good information. I encourage our folks to go take a look at it. What is the biggest, in your view, I mean, as someone who's been in the middle of this for a decade, sort of the biggest gap and the biggest challenge in our school funding system overall? Not about the, again, not the structure,
Sure.
but sort of like where are the problem areas?
I think it really does come down to adequacy. You know, we've never performed a sort of serious analysis of school funding adequacy in this state, which is really something I hope the task force actually takes upon themselves. You know, if you look at our funding per student, we rank 44th. You know, you can also look at effort, you know, the extent to which we spend money on schools in relation to the size of our state's economy. There we rank 40th. So there's a lot of room there that the state could use to increase the adequacy of its public schools.
Well, we're definitely going to keep talking about this, you know, over the next few months as it moves forward, because it obviously is critical. The resources we just heard on the issue with the K-3 class size makes a big difference. But Kris, thanks for being on the show and helping us understand a little bit more, and we look forward to continuing to talk to you.
Thanks.
After the break, this week's Leadership Spotlight.